everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of July and the new moon that we have coming up in Cancer on the 20th. Now, a lot to say in this video that I want to share with you. We start off even from the middle of the month with quite a strong energy. In fact, the next 6 months is going to be incredibly strong in terms of energy. It may feel intense to some people, but that's our choice of how much we buy into the intensity or not. On the 14th of July, we have the Sun in Cancer opposing that grouping of planets in Capricorn, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, that have reassembled in Capricorn. The Sun is exactly opposing Saturn that day on the 14th, which may give us a feeling of constriction or more rules or regulations coming in. And gradually the Sun will move to exactly oppose Jupiter and Pluto up until the 20th of the month. So it's shining a light, if you like, on that bunch of planets that we had in January. We had Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto in a tight bunch in Capricorn in January. So in some way there's an echo or a repeat of what was being set up in January. And I think it's very clear what was being set up in the world, but there may have been something personally for you. See where that group of planets in the last few degrees of Capricorn falls in your chart. Now, to emphasize that also, we have Jupiter in retrograde motion coming back to 22 degrees of Capricorn, that very important 22 degrees where Saturn and Pluto met on the 12th of January. Now, Jupiter is doing that 8th to the 16th of July. So again, we get another sense of a repeat or an echo of what was happening back in January. It's interesting, if we're looking down the timeline, that Mars and Pluto are both going to retrograde to that 22 of Capricorn again, each of them between August and November. So Jupiter's doing it first. Now Jupiter expands whatever it touches, Mars energizes, Pluto intensifies. So whatever is happening in this middle part, moving into the second part of July, will give us a glimpse of what may be coming up in those autumn months for us. Now, we also have this long-running all-year Jupiter conjunct Pluto. That was exact for the second time on the 30th of June. It will be exact for the last time on the 12th of November, very close to the US elections, but it's operational all year. Now, this can manifest, as I've spoken before, in many ways. It can be excessive Jupiter power, Pluto. It can operate in that way. It can be greater disclosure, Jupiter truth, Pluto long-held secrets, particularly of the rich and powerful, particularly financial or sexual secrets. They can come out as well. It can be resourcefulness, that in this new world we find ourselves in, many people are creating a whole new worldview, a whole new livelihood for themselves. And Jupiter-Pluto can take money to extremes. As I've mentioned before, it's the millionaire signature in very wealthy people's charts because they tend to be very resourceful. Equally, it's the signature of bankruptcy, so it can go one way or the other. But what it can promise us is spiritual abundance. Spiritual, Pluto, spiritual transformation, Jupiter, abundance, lots of. So I think we can all focus on that as a possibility. And one of the wonderful things about astrology, each archetype is like a multifaceted diamond. And we can choose as conscious beings which particular facet of the diamond or expression of the symbolism we want to focus on. That's, I think, one of the most brilliant, well, there's so many brilliant gifts of astrology, but I think that's certainly one of them. So spiritual abundance is a great thing for us to focus on going forwards, because that's clearly what is happening this year. Now, we have our new moon at 28-26 of Cancer. This is happening on the 20th of the month at 10:32 a.m. Pacific and 6:32 p.m. UK time. So see where 28 of Cancer falls in your chart. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website, pamgregory.com. You can go to this link above, buy a 2-part tutorial series from my store, and you can use that for any update I ever do, but that will teach you very simply from kind of zero how to find these points in your chart and therefore what the meaning is for you for every update I ever do for infinity. So, new moon. New moon is always a new beginning. And so it's a very good time to set a new intention for where this is falling in your chart. You're planting a new seed for what you want to manifest in that particular area of life, wherever it's falling. Do you want a different job? Do you want a new home? Where is it falling for you? Great time to do that. And you may be saying to yourself, well, at least this isn't an eclipse, it's a new moon. But remember, we are going to continue in that very strong eclipse energy for another 6 months. It wasn't just for the 5 weeks of eclipse portal we've lived through. It lasts for 6 months until another series of eclipses comes up at the end of the year. So this is actually a cardinal grand cross. And let me explain this to you. So we have the sun and moon together, always together at a new moon at 28 of Cancer. They are squaring Eris, goddess of discord and chaos, in Aries, 24 of Aries. They are opposing this bunch of planets in Capricorn, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. And the fourth corner, if you like, of this cardinal grand cross is Haumea, the dwarf planet I've talked about before, at 26 of Libra. So let's take each part of this. So firstly, sun and moon together in Cancer. You may be thinking about a new home, perhaps, or even a new country where you want that home, because Jupiter is in a sextile to Neptune here, and that can make you dream of, well, bigger dreams, bigger horizons, maybe a spiritual community that you want to live in another place. A lot of people want to do this right now, so there's a longing here, there's a yearning, Neptune, for a new home, so it can manifest very much on that level too. I'm going to come back to the Cancer energy a little bit later and other manifestations or meanings of that. Eris in Aries, I've talked about before. This is the goddess of chaos and discord, feisty, kicks off a lot, particularly when she feels or people feel that they have not been heard, very linked to people taking to the streets, protests, riots, but running up in that square to the Capricorn planet. Aries is an individual's power. So individuals taking to the streets, but running up against that top-down governmental law and order, rules and regulations, repressive force from Capricorn, very much governmental power. So, but this is our bigger context all through this year and actually till 2024, our bigger context with Pluto moving through Capricorn is the deconstruction of the old order. That is the process that is meant to be happening. However uncomfortable and turbulent it appears to be, that is what is meant to be happening right now. So we can see that on a daily basis, that governments aren't functioning very well, the social and political structures that we've known all of our lives are crumbling. And Eris, in its challenge on the street, is, if you like, accelerating that because it's undermining authority. Capricorn is the status quo, it's tradition, it's what has always been, it's the long term, and it's structures, political and social, in society. So we can see how that is one thread of the deconstruction. Another thread of the deconstruction is disclosure. I'm sure you're all aware of, there was quite an important arrest just a few days ago, in fact, just I think a day or two after the last Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which was very interesting. So we'll see what that brings, because many of us are going through kind of head-spinning shocks in terms of what we felt about reality, what we felt about leaders, governments, people were respected in various areas of life, and that may be quite shocking for us, but it's part of this collapse of the old order. It's also very much the South Node in Sagittarius. Our belief systems are falling away of the old. Another big thread in this deconstruction is awakening. Big theme of awakening. And this second 6 months of the year is going to accelerate that with the various transits we have. It's almost like a crescendo of energy that we're coming into at this point. So, you're probably all aware, but before I move on to that very important Mars moving into Aries, I just want to talk about Haumea again. I've talked about Haumea several times in past videos, and if you want to know a little more about her, you can either do an internet search or in one of my recent videos, New Planetary Archetypes, I was again, and I put the link below for that, I was again talking about her symbolism, because she's linked to the goddess or Hawaiian goddess of fertility. She was able to birth children from many parts of her body. She could regenerate herself from an old woman to a young maiden. But she had this amazing, instinctive, deep, shamanic connection to nature. So when the land was laid waste because of poor agricultural practices and there was no food, she had a magic stick called a macaline. She could just magically summon wild food, seafood, so people wouldn't go hungry. But it was a quantum leap. It was a quantum jump. And with many of these new dwarf planetary archetypes that I was talking about in that video, they have these two qualities in common. One is this deep instinctive connection to nature, and our connection to it, which is so intertwined, but also this quantum jump of the new, this quantum jump in human evolution. So if we're looking at this cardinal grand cross, part of it is about the falling away of the old, but the Haumea side of it is the birth of something quantum and an evolutionary jump. So we can choose where to put our focus, remember. Now, one of the dominant aspects for the next 6 months is going to be Mars, which has moved in on 28th of June to its warrior sign of Aries. It's going to stay there for a very unusual 6 months until the 6th of January next year. Usually it stays in a sign for 6 weeks. And it is going to be activating the Capricorn planets, going to be repeatedly squaring them through this second half of the year. And it's also from August to November going to be repeatedly coming to conjunct Eris. Now, yes, Eris is the goddess of discord and chaos, but she is also the female awakener. So what Mars is going to do is energize the awakening of many people. Okay, now there's going to be lots of Mars in the next 6 months, lots of Mars. And actually for the whole of July, we have Mercury square Mars, Mercury in Cancer square Mars in Aries. So they're going to be angry, lots of angry words, but angry people on the streets, as we've seen in Hong Kong, we're seeing in the US, very widespread, and in many other countries. Now, yes, Mars can express as anger, aggression, impulsivity, even violence. Yes, it can express at that very obvious physical level. But the wonderful thing about Mars in Aries, and I speak as someone who has Mars in Aries in their birth chart, and I bless it every day for giving me the grit to get through some very, very challenging events in my life. Because what the more positive expression of Mars in Aries is courage, passion, resilience, focus, a sense of mission, a sense of focus, and a very strong sense of self, not in an egoic way, but in an empowered way, that I know who I am and what I can do to help the world. And when you're in that very strong Mars in Aries energy, which I feel very much as part of who I am. It's my antidote to all my Pisces energy. It actually strengthens your aura. It strengthens your energy field. So if you like this as a hero energy, and this came to me the other day, that this is about finding the hero within yourself. Finding the hero within yourself. I think there was a song called that a few years ago, which I really loved. But that is what it's about, because this is very much what can give us empowerment and accelerate our awakening as we go through the next 6 months, because I think it's going to be huge these next 6 months. And we can choose how to react, because if there are angry events happening out there in the world, we can choose to make those our focus, and we can react every day. Oh my goodness, see what's happening, and now another thing, and now another thing. We can react from the gut, as it were. And that's Mars in Aries too. It's very instinctive and impulsive. But if we do that, not only are we going to be shredded energetically, but we are making our reference point external. We are constantly looking to the external to run our days for us. And that is victim consciousness, because we're giving away our power to the external, to the people or the events outside of us. And also what we're doing is meeting angry events with the same sense of polarity and divisiveness that are feeding those events. This is low-level reaction, low-level energy. We're just feeding what is, and we are postponing the better world that the enormous majority of the global population wants to see. Peace, clean water, abundant food, love, compassion, mutual respect for all sentient beings, all those things that the vast majority of the world want to see. We're postponing it because we're just on a frequency match with those angry events. So what we have to do is take a breath. Remember, Carl Jung said it isn't what happens to us in life, it's how we react to what happens, or how we deal with what happens to us. So if we could just take a breath and think, okay, I'm going to choose how I react to these events. I mean, one of the things I've stopped doing completely is listening to mainstream media, which has helped enormously, actually. It was dragging down my frequency. So you can choose to turn inwards, go inwards to your inner radio dial, your GPS, and say, okay, I'm going to choose a different frequency. I'm not going to react to this and angry, victim. I am going to choose a positive emotion of peace, compassion, love, gratitude, appreciation, and I'm going to set my GPS to that trajectory, because everything in the universe is frequency, everything. And I'm going to stay on that trajectory as an experiment for the next 6 months, and I'm going to look for things in my day that feed that emotion. So let's say it's gratitude. I will find things all the way through my day to feel grateful for. I'm grateful for blue sky. I'm grateful I have a tree. I'm grateful I'm looking into a flower. I'm grateful I can even think of a person or a pet I love. Find reasons to feed that emotion that you've set your GPS for. Because then you are actually, apart from the fact it's empowering you, you are being of the greatest service to humanity you can be, because you are actually helping to raise collective consciousness so we don't keep on just bumping along, rubber hitting the road. We are creating a different future, but we have to get beyond what currently is energetically to pull in that different future. So this is our mastery. This is our mastery, our spiritual mastery for 2020. So find the hero within yourself. Now, one of my obsessions is how reality is formed. And you probably, if you've read my 2 books, you will see that kind of blazing through. Because particularly in my first book, you don't really believe in astrology, do you? Whether you look at the ancient philosophy of the Vedas or the philosophy of the ancient Greeks or leading edge quantum physics, they are all essentially saying the same thing, that reality starts in the ether. It starts way up source, if you like, nothingness in 0-point field is just a wave. It has no matter, no form, no structure, no frequency, no manifestation, no solidity. And it's only when we, with our own individual frequency, interact with that 0-point field that we start to pull the wave into the particle that collapses into an event or into matter. Light and sound also produce frequency, and I'm reminded of the exquisite archetype of Quawa, the dwarf planet Quawa. Again, go to my New Planetary Archetypes video if you don't remember that. And the archetype was about singing and dreaming, singing and dancing our reality into being. So a very clear example of how this works was the wonderful work of Masaru Emoto. Wonderful Japanese man, died a few years ago. I'll put a link to some of the images that he produced in his work below. I'm sure many of you know about this, but he took various phials of water and he would ask people to send very specific emotions to these phials of water. So one phial of water received hate, another anger, another jealousy, another judgment, negative emotions. And then what he did was freeze the water and look at the crystals that had formed under a microscope. And where there were ugly emotions, there were ugly crystals. Twisted, distorted, asymmetrical. Remember that your body is about 70% water. So just think about what you're doing to your cells as well with all this, and also what you're broadcasting to the world. But then he took other phials of water and asked people to send love, gratitude, compassion, joy, ecstasy to these different phials of water. Again, froze them, and he got exquisite, beautiful, symmetrical crystals from those positive emotions, because the more positive our emotions, the more coherent the frequency and the more coherent the structure to those crystals and also to what's happening in our body. And it was just such a tangible demonstration of what emotion does to us and to the world. So I think that's quite a helpful way to describe it. So really commit, use the courage of commitment of Mars in Aries to say, for the next 6 months, I'm going to accelerate the arrival of a better world for all of us by keeping my frequency beyond current circumstances, keeping my frequency very positive, beyond current circumstances. Because if I can do that, I will be really serving myself and humanity very well. And coming back to the new moon in Cancer, yes, you can set a new intention personally for where it's falling in your chart, but can you also set a new intention for your emotional frequency? Because Cancer is all about sensitivity, it's about feeling, it's about emotion, it's about open-heartedness. Remember that as our Earth is moving through this photon belt and receiving, I've talked about this many times, receiving a lot more cosmic and galactic energy. Our DNA is being upgraded, but also our heart field is expanded. And Cancer, through its compassion, helps us open our heart field. And all of this is part of the ascension process, all of it. So can you have a secondary or possibly a primary intention using this new moon in Cancer of that is going to be my emotional frequency, and I'm going to find the hero inside myself for these next 6 months to commit to that. I hope I've got so much in my head, so I hope I'm making this clear, because it's something I feel so passionate about this for all of us to bring in a better world. So I hope that's been helpful for you. If you'd like more information about my books, my teaching videos, my ever so long monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And I hope you found this helpful information, and have a wonderful new moon, new beginning in Cancer on the 20th. Bye for now.